The important thing I want to draw your attention to is that beforehand, both parties were bound by orange. Both parties mostly had a foot in orange around 2000. And now, this is the shift that's happened. And particularly the right, this is what I'm going to emphasize, is it's dipped down mostly out of orange. And pulled into red. And that's why all of us are feeling half crazy most of the time. 4 different value systems: caring values for progressives, fairness values for center-left folks, liberty values for center-right folks, and heritage values for social conservatives on the right. And all I want to call your attention to is 2 things. The pathology that each shares in its unhealthy form is cultural bias and tribalism. And that's where I think we are, is each worldview has been pulled into red because of some of the developments that have happened. And second is that for both progressive and heritage values, they can have a tendency toward authoritarianism. So I'm going to move really fast. Apologies in advance, because 20 minutes goes really fast. So I want to talk with you about some ideas, some thinking I've been doing about the new right. And by that, I mostly mean the post-Trump right. So how can Integral help us make sense of all the crazy stuff going on on the new right, and help see it as less crazy, help make sense of it? And also, how could we start to articulate an integral conservatism? I think in integral circles, we tend to kind of skew progressive, skew left. So I want us to bring some curiosity around the conservative mindset. And I've been obsessed with trying to understand the right since Trump was elected, but also really ever since I kind of became politically conscious back around 9/11. That was kind of what was my awakening into political consciousness. Before I start, how many of you have heard of the movement called Catholic integralism?
Oh, only yes. Because of reading this.
Okay, so just Rigel and a couple. Okay, great. Already, really?
I think I've felt it, but
okay.
I didn't hear about it.
So I want to do 4 things. First, I want to talk about the old right. What is that? Why did it collapse? Second, give you a warp speed overview of the terrain of the new right. Third, I want to talk about what Catholic integralism is. And then lastly, offer some kind of ideas for how we might start to think about a healthier form of conservatism to bring more balance to the force, as it were. So this is super rough, but what I loved about doing this was it was the most fun I've ever had using the Apple Pencil. So you're going to get a lot of great spiral drawings here. This is very crude, of course. But I think this is roughly what's happened in the shift. And the important thing I want to draw your attention to is that beforehand, both parties were bound by orange. Both parties mostly had a foot in orange around 2000. And now, this is the shift that's happened. And particularly the right, this is what I'm going to emphasize, is it's dipped down mostly out of orange. And pulled into red. And that's why all of us are feeling half crazy most of the time.
I'm sorry, that's representing Catholics, those.
No, I'm talking about the whole stack. Yeah, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to turn to Catholics later. Yeah. So the old right, what was this? This is roughly Reagan fusionism, a fusion of orange and blue. I'm going to use the Spiral Dynamics original colors just for ease of reference. And the old right typically was regarded as consisting of a three-legged stool: free market economics, a hawkish foreign policy forged from anti-communism and military interventionism, and then social conservatism. Now, if I had to pick 3 things that I think have kicked out these 2 stools, one is the Great Recession, made a lot of people on the right lose confidence in kind of the free market approach, and the war in Iraq. That debacle put the kibosh on this kind of muscular foreign policy internationalist approach, and all that's left is culture. One of the reasons that the GOP has, I think, become a post-policy party, and it's running on the fumes of culture war, is that it doesn't have these original orange kind of bearings anymore. So 3 things that happened was the Great Recession, the debacle in Iraq, and I would say John McCain's selection of Sarah Palin. for vice presidential candidate in 2008. That opened the floodgates for silly season. And she was sort of, as I've heard it put, the John the Baptist to the coming of Trump. Okay, so if any of you read Ross Douthat in the New York Times, I promise I didn't steal these ideas from him. He happened to write a column a few weeks ago that articulated a lot of what I was talking about. But he tweeted this back in 2016 in starting to think about what's going to happen to the right with the coming of Trump. And so here's my sense for what's happened from a spiral perspective. We've got the emergence of a kind of magical thinking that's represented by the QAnon movement. So this idea that it's a conspiracy, that there's a series of elites who are sacrificing children and drinking their blood, and there's this satanic kind of cannibalistic cult. These are the people running the world. Dark forces manipulating events, very conspiratorial, magical thinking. The Atlantic ran a cover story last year around a mysterious figure named Bronze Age Pervert, who wrote a book called Bronze Age Mindset that, to sum it up, is a sort of fascist, anti-Semitic, anti-feminist, anti-egalitarian, anti-democracy tract. And it's kind of this idea that the strong should rule the weak, this kind of neo-Nietzschean vibe, hyper-masculinist. This guy's a nudist bodybuilder. And it's this crazy text, but it has become required reading for especially many young people on the right. He has 200,000 Twitter followers. For a time, his book was in the top 150 sellers on Amazon. So highly influential and super red energy. Moving up the spiral, barstool conservatives is a term that's been coined for, it's after the Barstool Sports media empire founded by Dave Portnoy. This is guys who like to engage in locker room talk. Guys who are upset that they can't call things gay anymore. They're disgusted by the moralism of the woke left as well as the religious right. So they are very libertarian in their social thinking, legalize porn, drugs, gambling. Just leave us alone. Let us do our own thing. So kind of libertarian, kind of some of that red energy. And everything I've talked about so far is completely non-Christian or post-Christian. So this is starting to shift into that view. So Christian nationalists, that one's pretty self-explanatory. And notice most of these memes, these movements I've talked about before, there's very little orange showing up. They're more like cultural grievances or attitudes than they are any kind of real political platform. But they are what people experience as politics now. The next is called the Benedict option. This is a term from Rod Dreher, an American conservative. It's named after the Benedictine monasteries that formed in the Middle Ages. Their conclusion is that liberal secular society is a failure. We're living through a new kind of dark ages, and we should pull our kids out of public schools, found our own intentional communities. And there's some green stuff here, too. It's kind of back to the land. Let's make our own food and make our own clothes and, have these little kind of communes for conservatives. Dreher wrote another book called Crunchy Conservatives, getting this kind of pomo traditionalist vibe. Then there's the Never Trumpers. They're pretty much the old right. George Will, Jonah Goldberg, David Frum, Bill Kristol. These are folks who are basically supporting Democrats now. They still believe what they believe, but they have more or less left the Republican Party. And then lastly is the tech right, what some have called it as, or the tech accelerationists. Musk, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel. They very, very libertarian in their thinking, and since the woke, sort of the Great Awakening, they've kind of tacked right politically. So that's a very, very quick overview. But what unites all of these tribes is their opposition to the quote-unquote woke mind virus, which is Musk's term. And one of the reasons that I drew little squiggles of blue and red and purple here is because I think most of what gets called woke is not really green. It's not healthy green. It's the way in which folks tracking at red or amber or purple are using green concepts and language in a sort of illiberal, uncritical way. And these folks are have a point, that some of that is regressive and is a problem, but they tend to mistake the mistake of completely dismissing green values and perspectives from that. This is some couple slides from Steve McIntosh's book, Developmental Politics, which is pretty much my favorite book on politics. Everybody should read it if you haven't. He tracks 4 different value systems: caring values for progressives, fairness values for center-left folks, liberty values for center-right folks, and heritage values for social conservatives on the right. And all I want to call your attention to is 2 things. The pathology that each shares in its unhealthy form is cultural bias and tribalism. And that's where I think we are, is each worldview has been pulled into red because of some of the developments that have happened. And second is that for both progressive and heritage values, they can have a tendency toward authoritarianism. So that's part of what we're locked in, I think, right now.